This true story will haunt you every time you go into the water. In Australia, a terrifying incident happened in this black river, with 3 guys that Hollywood got inspired by this story and made 2 horror movies. One movie was Black Water, and the other was Rogue. What exactly happened there that day? Let's take a look. 3 childhood friends, Brett, Sean, and Ashley, had grown up together in Darwin City in Australia's Northern Territory. And if you don't know Darwin, let me paint the picture for you. It sits right at the very top of Australia, where the land is raw, the heat is absolutely brutal, and the wildlife is genuinely designed to kill you. These weren't tourists or outsiders who didn't know the land. These were local guys who had grown up in this environment their entire lives. A detail that matters a lot, and you'll understand why in a few minutes. One day, the 3 of them loaded up their truck, strapped their quad bikes to the back, and headed south with a simple plan to head to a large salt flat a long drive from Darwin City, where they could race bikes, spray mud everywhere, and just have a great day out. Nothing complicated, just 3 mates doing what mates do. As they drove further south, the roads got rougher and the jungle got thicker, and after passing a small holiday park, there was nothing. No shops, no people, no signal, just dense, wild Australian bush stretching out in every direction. So they pushed through it until they arrived right near the banks of the Finnis River, and just to the left of it, the wide open salt flat they'd been heading for. Now, before we go any further, you need to understand what the Finnis River actually is. It cuts through miles of remote bushland, but what makes it unlike almost any river you have ever seen is the color of its water, which is completely, totally black. Not dark, not murky, but black. You put your hand in and your fingers disappear after just an inch or two. There is absolutely zero visibility beneath the surface, meaning you have no idea what is in that water. And in crocodile country, that is a terrifying thing. They unloaded the bikes and started racing, and since it had rained heavily the night before, the salt flat was completely soaked, meaning every lap they did threw up thick walls of mud, absolutely covering all 3 of them from head to toe. But they were laughing, racing, covered in mud, and living their best lives, and after a few hours of this, they decided it was time to head home. So they loaded the bikes back onto the truck and were all set to leave, when one of them suggested they quickly jump in the river to wash the mud off. Before getting in the truck, figuring a quick rinse was all it would take to rinse off, get back in, and drive home. Here is where we need to stop for a second, because in the Northern Territory, there is an unspoken rule that locals live by. The water is not your friend, especially black water, and the Finnis River was not a swimming zone. Locals knew that in water like this, there was almost always something in there that would kill you. But here is the thing. Brett, Sean, and Ashley had jumped into the Finnis before, multiple times, and nothing had ever happened. So familiarity had replaced fear, which is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a person, and they started walking toward the river. What they didn't fully register at first was that the river wasn't the same, because heavy rains had caused the Finnis to overflow its natural banks, and the current that was normally slow and lazy now moved with genuine heavy force. When they reached the edge of the riverbank, it dropped off immediately into deep, fast-moving, black water, with mangrove trees growing along the banks, their branches hanging low over the surface like outstretched arms. So the 3 boys grabbed onto these branches, carefully lowering themselves into the water just enough to rinse off, making sure they had a firm grip and were not being stupid about it. One by one, they washed off the mud, deciding it was clean enough and time to go. And then, Brett's hands slipped. He dropped fully into the river, the current grabbing him instantly, pulling him away from the bank, away from the mangrove roots, and away from his friends as he called out for Ashley and Sean to help him. They turned, saw him being carried by the current, and made their decision in less than a second, both of them jumping in. And since these 3 were excellent swimmers, this wasn't a panic situation yet. The plan being straightforward: to drift with the current, find something solid, and pull themselves out. Sean moved to the front, Ashley took the middle, and Brett was at the back. And while they were uncomfortable, they were okay, until Ashley screamed that there was something in the water and to get out now. With no time to think, Sean didn't look back. He just swam with arms and legs, going as fast as physically possible, straight toward a tree growing right out of the middle of the river, hitting it, grabbing on, and pulling himself up into the branches. As Ashley came sweeping past with the current, Sean reached down, grabbed him, and hauled him bodily up out of the water, both of them breathing hard and clinging to the tree as they turned to look for Brett. But Brett was gone. The water where he had been was empty, and when they screamed his name, there was only silence, just the sound of the Black River moving below them, until Sean noticed a small flash of yellow just beneath the surface of the water, staring at it and asking Ashley what it was. The shape slowly rose and then broke through, revealing a massive 13-foot saltwater crocodile, the largest reptile on the planet, and one of the only two species that actively and intentionally hunts human beings. And hanging from its jaws, motionless with his head pointing downward, was Brett, still wearing his yellow jacket. Sean and Ashley could not speak or move, as the crocodile held Brett in its jaws and simply looked up at them. In that moment, both Sean and Ashley understood that it knew they were up there, and it was not going any. For several agonizing minutes, the crocodile held Brett and watched them. Then, without any splash or struggle, it simply sank back down into the black water and disappeared, meaning Brett was gone, and the two of them were completely alone. Grief had to wait as their brains switched to pure survival instinct, climbing higher into the tree, finding separate branches to sit on, reasoning that their families would call the police when they didn't come home and a search would begin, meaning they just needed to stay in the tree. But reality started closing in as they wondered what would happen when they needed to sleep, knowing if they fell asleep and lost their grip, they'd fall straight into the water where the crocodile was. And when they looked down, the crocodile was back, without Brett, its snout just breaking the surface with eyes pointing upward at them, just waiting. Hours passed, and when the last light disappeared from the sky, the Australian bush went totally, absolutely dark, with no moon, no phones, and they could not see their own hands, the water, or the crocodile. But they knew it was down there, so they held onto each other's arms so neither would fall asleep. And then the storm hit, rain hammering down so hard they could barely breathe, thunder shaking the jungle, the deafening noise bringing a new horror because they couldn't hear the water anymore, leaving them completely blind and now completely deaf to the one threat that could kill them. Then, lightning cracked across the sky, and in that single white flash, the entire river lit up and they saw the crocodile, still directly beneath the tree, still looking up, and every time lightning struck it was the same. While the water level was rising, the rain pushing the river higher, meaning soon the crocodile wouldn't even need them to fall. At some point during that terrible night, Sean decided he needed to move to a higher branch, reaching up, grabbing a branch above him, testing his weight and pulling, but the branch snapped, dropping Sean straight down into the black water where he went under. Submerged in the exact same river that took Brett, the word crocodile ran on a loop in his head as he fought his way back to the surface, the current having already dragged him away from the tree, so he swam back, arms pulling hard, every nerve screaming as his hand hit the lower branch. As he pulled himself up, his legs dangled in the water, absolutely certain he was about to feel teeth close around them, until Ashley grabbed him and he got back onto the branch. And when they looked down, in the very next flash of lightning, the crocodile was circling right where Sean had just been. Dawn finally came and the storm had passed, revealing the crocodile still circling the base of the tree, but the water had risen significantly overnight, so the gap between them and the surface was shrinking. Then, later the next morning, they heard a voice cutting through the bush, calling their names, realizing it was a police officer, as their families had filed missing persons reports and the search team had found them. A helicopter came in low, but the rotor wash shook the tree so violently they almost fell in, forcing the helicopter to pull back, but the deafening noise and wind had frightened the crocodile away, allowing the rescue team to move fast, bringing a boat right up to the tree and getting both men on. Sean and Ashley were physically unharmed but psychologically destroyed, and Brett's body was never recovered, as the Finnis River gave nothing back. These two survived one night. But did you know there's a man who survived 438 days completely alone at sea, and 438 days is not a typo? If that sounds unbelievable, the video is right here. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.